Today I want to talk about different perspectives we could have on the world or ourselves or the condition we're in. One way to think about this is through the lens of judgment. This is good or this is bad. I'm happy about this thing and I'm sad about this thing. There's actually a parable from ancient China, the farmer and the horse. The farmer has a horse and the horse gets out and runs away. And all his neighbors are like, oh my God, what bad luck. His answer is maybe. Good luck, bad luck, who knows? A few days later, the horse comes back and it's got a herd of wild horses with him. Now the farmer has all these horses in his pen. The other farmers are like, wow, what great luck. The farmer says, as he did before, maybe. Good luck, bad luck, who can say? The farmer's son goes out to tame it and falls off the horse and breaks his leg. Again, all the neighbors are like, wow, that's really bad luck. And again, the farmer says, who knows, maybe. A few days later, the army comes looking for recruits to go to war, but the farmer's son's got a broken leg. He can't go. What great luck, everyone says. And the farmer says, maybe, who knows? I think the point of this story is that you can look at someone breaking a leg and think, well, that's bad luck, but you just don't know. It just happened. It just is. And the opposite of this perspective of judgment is a perspective of acceptance. Judgment is essentially relative, saying, you're to the left of me right now, but if I turn around this way, you're actually to the right of me. It just depends on where you're standing, what your perspective is. Acceptance is essentially a perspective that doesn't have relativity to it. It's just talking about the world as it is.
From my experience working with people in community and helping support them, that's what people wrestle with. That acceptance piece is really what we have to do before we can take action. The judgment gets in the way of accepting that something's happening. We can identify our own judgment of ourselves, but when we're able to accept it and say, I know that I have trouble focusing in school, it opens us to be able to ask for help. We have to be able to understand how we judge ourselves and then accept it before we can say, hey, I need a little help with this.
Judgment gets in the way of us accepting the world as it is. We can get into a state of denial. This is bad and this is happening to me. I don't want it to be happening, so I'm going to deny that it's even happening. Whereas if you can get to a state of it doesn't make me a good person or a bad person, the situation I'm in or what I'm going through, then it's easier to get to this place of, okay, well, this is what's happening. It's not a situation I want, but I can at least accept that it's happening and we can move forward from there. How are we going to fix the situation, if you will, or at least make it so that things are better in your life? To illustrate this is the story of the meteor that came and wiped out all the dinosaurs. Life evolved on planet Earth, and for a long time, dinosaurs were ruling, and then out of nowhere, a meteor comes and wipes out pretty much all of the large animals on the planet. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? If you look at it from a dinosaur perspective, it's a really bad thing. But if you look at it from a mammal perspective, a human perspective, it's a very good thing. We wouldn't have evolved to this place if the dinosaurs were still around. If that meteor hadn't hit, then the sequence of events that led to us evolving into these conscious beings, we wouldn't be here today. Again, it's not a good event or a bad event that this happened. It's just an event that happened and it caused another sequence of events that caused a different timeline to unfold.
Sometimes I would come into people's lives and they would be really pissed that I was there. Lack of acceptance or even judgment of the position they were in. Having this kind of conversation, we're really just listening and being compassionate and letting people express that feeling. I don't like that you're here and I feel judged and I don't want to do this. Trying to bring them to that place of not judging and accepting that I'm there to help. That's a dance, right? Often I would work with folks and do that dance with people. And by the end of our experience, they were like, when you first came, I didn't like you. Now I'm a little sad you're leaving. I just want to offer that as hope for people who might feel like it's a lot to ask for help. And maybe that feels like a judgment experience.
There's a word from literature that I like to use when talking about judgment versus acceptance. And it's this word called multiperspectivity, which is essentially looking at something, a story from different perspectives. Examples in literature, The Wizard of Oz versus Wicked, two different perspectives of the same story. The story of Fire and Ice, the book that spawned the show Game of Thrones. Every chapter in that book is told from a different perspective. In literature, you can tell a story and have the same set of events interpreted through a different lens from different characters. I like this concept because it allows me to get outside of my own perspective. I can get very locked into the way I see the world and think that that is in some way capital T truth. But if I can expand my mind and think, okay, well, that's just where I'm seeing things right now, and understand that every other person is seeing the world through a different lens, a different set of eyes, can help me get out of my own ego and my own way of seeing things. Sometimes I like to call this the God view. If I'm not in my body and I'm outside of it in a godlike perspective, looking at me interacting with other people, and I'm just another person who's interacting with other people in the world, that can help me get more perspective, if you will, on my situation, considering myself as just another human being on the planet.
You get that POV view, or you only see things through from one perspective. And something I learned working with people and trying to help them see other perspectives is When we only see our perspective, we can feel really stuck or closed in or almost claustrophobic. But there's really simple ways of saying to people like, so what do you think that other person might have felt in that situation? Or imagine you or your mom. You don't even have to wait for an answer. But also too, like in moments of difficulty, it can be good to understand that other people are having other experiences and perspectives outside of yourself. It's not all about me and that there's other things happening. That multiperspectivity piece, I think it's a beautiful concept. In moments of pain, to remember it's not just you, there's other people around you and that other perspectives are important. But also if you're struggling with that, just being able to even have that concept, I think is really helpful. Knowing that there's other perspectives beside yourself, I think can be helpful.
I shifted my perspective on a series of events that happened to me. And this really gets back to the pivot point where I went from engineering and tech and decided to move into mental health. My parents passed. My mom passed when I was in my mid-30s. She was 64, a heart attack. No one saw it coming. That actually put me into big depression, feeling sorry for myself. What a bad thing that happened to me. And then 3 years later, my dad also passed in his 60s. He was 68. He had had health issues, but he was also getting treated. It felt like he had things under control. It felt like a random thing out of nowhere. And I really felt sorry for myself. But on the other hand, those series of events were the wake-up call that I needed to get into therapy seriously, to get support, get out of a bad marriage, work on my mental health, to get me to where I'm right now, talking to you. Right. And if those things hadn't happened, maybe I would have gotten there later. It would have been later, though, and I might not have gone the whole way. I can't know what would have happened. All I know is that my parents did pass early, and I know that that was an inflection point for me in my life to get me to where I am. The thing I'm most proud of all my accomplishments, getting my mental health to a place where I feel like it's under control, that I can take care of myself, and then I can pass this message along to others. Ultimately, my perspective on my parents dying early is that they gave me this great gift. They gave me this gift of my own mental health and my ability to improve and to help the world.
Thank you for sharing that beautiful story.
We talk about judgment, and it's easy to judge others, but we also can judge ourselves. Sometimes we can be the worst judge of ourselves. There's a term I like to use for this. It's called the inner critic. But that inner critic came from somewhere. Someone in society said, you're a good person for doing this, you're a bad person for doing that, and we internalize it. In a meeting between the Dalai Lama and a group of American psychologists in 1990, one of the psychologists brought up the concept of negative self-talk. Since there are no words in Tibetan that translate into low self-esteem and self-loathing, it took quite a long while for the psychologist to convey what they meant. But this wasn't a translation problem. It was a problem of conceptualization. Self-loathing, people do that. The Dalai Lama was incredulous. Once the Dalai Lama understood what they were saying, he turned to the other Tibetan monks in the room and explained what the psychologists were suggesting, asking, how many of you have experienced this low self-esteem, self-contempt, or self-loathing? There was complete silence. Here was a psychological state of mind so ubiquitous in our culture, everyone experiences it from time to time, if not every single day. Yet Tibetans, trained since childhood in the art of meditation, acted like they were being told about some alien life form. The Dalai Lama turned back to the psychologist and asked a simple question: why would you ever let your mind get like this? There are two things I take away from this. It's not an innate part of human nature to be self-critical. The message of hope is that you can get to a point where you don't have an inner critic, or at least you've quieted it. It's a voice that you might hear, but you don't have to give it any credence.
I think that's a beautiful story. I'm a Buddhist since 16, 17 when I discovered that I needed ways to think about myself that weren't injuring myself. And meditation was a big tool for me to realize my inner voice, my inner critic, was really getting in the way. So that story really resonates with me. And it's something I still practice to this day. Those intrusive thoughts or that thinking, I can slow it down with meditation. Even if I can't stop the negative thinking or that inner critic, I can be aware of it. And that's just really helpful.
Judgment is everywhere in our society, and it's hard to get away from it. The best way to start to address this is to just be aware of it, which is why we're talking about it here today, to label it. Notice when you're being judgmental. Notice when other people are being judgmental in a non-judgmental way. Also take that perspective of what would stepping out of judgment look like? What would stepping into acceptance on what is going on here look like? It's actually simpler to be in a state of acceptance than it is into judgment. You have to take this leap of, I'm feeling bad about this thing, to this is bad. It's too easy to get caught up in this state of this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, versus this is what's here and what can we do to move forward from this?
When I'm feeling judgmental is just to ask a question or be internally inquisitive of just why am I feeling this way or where is that coming from?
That's a good point. Curiosity, I've heard that a lot in supportive conversations. Be curious about these difficult emotions that you're having. Be aware of meta emotions, having emotions about your emotions. I feel sad about this, but I feel guilty for feeling sad about this. If you're feeling sad about something, just feel sad about it. Please don't pile more stuff on top of that. Thanks for being here. If you want to support us, please share this with others. After all, our goal is for everyone in the world to live a happy and healthy life, and that starts with you. See you next time.